Hey everyone, for the past couple of weeks, I've been using iOS 18 and iPadOS 18, and we're now on developer beta 2, so I feel like I've had really enough time to kind of go through and figure out all of the major features and changes to discuss with you guys. Now, overall, I'd have to say that this update is pretty minimal. Sure, there are a few new things that are coming, but there aren't really a ton, and I feel like Apple, in a lot of ways, have just been bunting year after year rather than swinging for the fences with some major new developments and new features and really wowing us. Now, sure, the AI stuff is really cool, but even with that, you're only going to be able to access that stuff if you have the newest hardware, particularly with iPhones. You're only going to be able to get that if you have the iPhone 15 Pro or 15 Pro Max models, and you can learn more about that on my video that I have about the most recent 2024 WWDC event if you haven't already checked that out. But regardless, even if you have a developer account and you do have those new devices, you aren't even going to be able to play with that stuff until later in the year anyway. So it's a little bit unfortunate if I'm being completely honest. I'd really love to check that stuff out and give you guys some information and insights from a real everyday type of user on how that's going to play out. But regardless, let's start out with probably the most apparent new feature, which is going to be the home screen customization options that we have now. So to access home screen customization, it's really easy. You're just going to touch and hold on any blank space on your home screen and tap the edit button on the top left of your screen. Now you can choose from several icon options. You can choose auto, light, dark, and tinted. So personally, I like the look of the dark icons, so I generally just leave them as dark. One thing to be mindful though of is that with both the light and the dark modes, only the Apple designed apps really change, nothing else looks particularly different. That said though, if you do want to have a unified color palette for your home screen, you can choose the tint option. So this is going to change the tint of every single app on your device to look entirely monochromatic. Now, this is kind of cool, but the thing that I really dislike is for certain widgets, like the Photos widget in particular, if you choose a tint option, it'll apply a really, really strong color cast to that widget, which just looks odd. You have photos that are in full color, and then you apply a really strong green cast or something like that. It just makes everything look gross and terrible. So for me, it's really hit or miss as to whether or not it's a feature that I would want to use on a daily basis anyway. But you can also now move apps all around your home screen, freely placing them wherever you want, so you no longer are bound to have all of your empty space filled up by apps from left to right and top to bottom. So you can really change things up how you like now. And speaking of customization, you can now even customize what the two bottom buttons on your lock screen do. So for me in this example, I have my flashlight still on the left because generally I find that to be a pretty useful feature. But on the right, since I already have a shortcut to open the camera, I have already swapped it to opening up a specific app. So you can do this. Of course, you can set these buttons to do pretty much whatever you want, even running automations with Siri shortcuts. So that's definitely something that's pretty neat and really welcome. I know a lot of people have kind of wanted to customize that for a while now, so it's great that Apple are giving us more customization features. The next most obvious feature is going to be in Control Center, which I feel received one of the biggest and most needed upgrades over the past generations. So now we actually have multiple pages of controls, and we've been used to having the main page for a while now. So to access this, you just swipe down from the top right of your screen, and you're going to be greeted with all of these new controls for you to use. So your first page here is going to be your most frequently used ones. And now we have even more controls that we can add here. So this will actually even be opened up to third parties. So down the road, when more developers make use of this, you can really customize this however it is that you would like and do a lot of different quick actions within apps. Another thing that's really nice too is that we can even adjust the size of the icons to reveal more information or just makes the buttons easier to press. On the right side of the screen, we also get a few glyphs, so that way you can quickly go from your favorites page into pages dedicated for media, HomeKit, connectivity, and so on. So overall, I think that this is pretty nice, useful, and helpful. And perhaps one of the most interesting additions here is actually the addition of a power button at the top right of the screen. So if you press and hold this, you're going to get a little tap on your iPhone, and this will give you the option to entirely power off your iPhone, which is kind of nice. If your hands are full and you don't want to shut off your iPhone, or you can't shut off your iPhone using the power and volume up shortcut, you can now just do this. So those are some of the major changes that you'll notice on a day-to-day basis, but there's some even more features that I like, starting out with settings. And I know what you're saying, who cares about settings? Well, Apple have really simplified this app finally, and they've gotten rid of a lot of the clutter that used to be present. So if you recall back to iOS 17 and every previous iOS pretty much, there have always been settings for all of the apps that you have installed on your iPhone in a big gigantic list that you'd have to scroll through, and it was just really cumbersome because it was on the main page of your settings. So, you'd be scrolling and scrolling and scrolling just trying to find the settings for the app that you're looking for, and it just wasn't laid out that intelligently. Well, here they finally decided to actually smarten up, and they just tucked all of our app settings into a menu conveniently called Apps. So if we tap here all the way at the bottom on Apps, we can see all of the settings for our individual apps and have a handy slider on the right side to just search alphabetically, or we can use the search bar at the top. Getting back to the home screen though, you also have the option to make some of your apps locked behind Face ID. So let's just say that you do a lot of journaling or something like that inside of the journal app, and you don't want people to see your thoughts and ideas. If you give somebody your phone and it's unlocked, right now they can pretty much do whatever they want. Now you can actually put a lock on that app. So if they try to open it, they won't be able to without you. Also, if you have apps that you don't want other people seeing that you have on your phone, you can use the same method to also hide them. So if you want to do this, it's going to prevent you from getting notifications from the app. It's going to put your app in a dedicated folder inside of your app drawer that's going to require Face ID to even see the contents of it. So that's kind of cool if you're into that sort of thing. For me, I don't really have too much that would actually be useful for that, but hey, maybe you're somebody who likes to hide some apps and stuff, no judgment there. Now, something that is really nice for people like me who are more productivity focused, Apple have also finally merged calendar and reminders in a pretty powerful way. So now if you create reminders and you schedule them for a time and a date, they'll automatically be added to your calendar in that slot. So that way everything is all nicely visible on our schedule. This is super nice for keeping organized, especially if you have an Apple Watch and you use widgets for calendar like I do. So the reminders are now going to show up there, and I just think that that's generally a really nice thing that vastly improves the utility of calendar. Before, when you were just in month view, you'd also see little dots below the dates, which wasn't really particularly beneficial. Now, what's really nice with the redesign of calendar is that you have colors and bars and things like that that are basically going to give you information like what calendar all of these events are coming from. So I'm really, really happy to see that Apple have taken productivity a step further. And keeping up with productivity focused features inside of Notes, we now have the option to record audio directly inside of a note that we're taking. And we can even view a live transcript of the conversation, which is pretty cool. Once we finish with a conversation, there's also built-in tools to search transcripts and find relevant information that was discussed quickly and easily. We also can copy the entire transcript and paste it into another program, so that's a pretty powerful feature and something that's nice to have built in directly to Notes. We also can make use of the new Math Notes feature to make budgeting and accounting for trips and other projects a breeze, which is pretty convenient. So if you need to add up some totals or other things like that, you can even make use of variables, so that way you can intuitively add costs together and perform other calculations with ease. Which, as a side note, the calculator has been massively improved, so now you can actually choose from either a standard calculator or a scientific one in either portrait or landscape mode. Before, it was just in landscape mode that you could use the scientific calculator. You also can now get right into Math Notes from Calculator if you want, and it also has a memory now, so you can go back and repeat calculations and use results from other calculations in a new one. So overall, I think that this is a huge update and something that a lot of people will really find useful, especially if you're a scientist like me. Now, Notes also has a new feature, which is called folding. So if you're familiar with programming, this is going to be something that is very familiar to you, but something that is super useful. And if you aren't familiar with programming or with this technique, it is a really great thing. Essentially, you can create a heading to define what the text beneath is going to be about. You can write as much as you want, and then just simply collapse all of the text by hitting the little caret next to the heading entry, and it'll reduce the perceived length of your notes. That way it's a lot easier to navigate and sort of see the flow of your ideas at a later date. Now, moving on to photos. Inside of photos, we get a complete redesign. This redesign is something that I both like and dislike for different reasons. Firstly, it's a lot more clean to look at. It really just puts your content at the forefront, which is cool. That's what you want. Now at the bottom here, we have automatically generated highlights and things for you to take a look at, ranging from recent days. Below that, you have people and pets. You'll also have other memories, trips, albums, other things like that, that'll all be down there. You can, of course, customize all of the things that are going to be down there. Above, you're also going to be getting your full photo library, and you can swipe left and right, so you can see like highlights, you can see featured photos, videos, other things like that. So it's just a lot more personal now and a lot more easy to navigate in some senses. I think, as with anything that's a major change, it's going to take some getting used to, but I think you'll like it overall. And speaking of personal things, we've also got a lot more new ways to communicate via iMessage. So now we actually get suggestions while we're typing on how to emphasize certain parts of our message so that we can make it a little bit more fun. We can also highlight individual parts manually and add text effects to them if the autocomplete doesn't catch something that you really want to emphasize. Or if that's a little bit too much for you, you can also now just do traditional text formatting things like bold, underline, italic, and strike through for your text. So that's kind of neat. Also, inside of Tapback, we can now tap back with any emoji that we want, including memojis, which is pretty cool. So you're not limited anymore by the tapbacks that Apple gives you by default, like, dislike, love, and exclamation point, and all of that stuff. So pretty cool. Also, another really big feature for me is the ability to send a text later. So for a while now, we've had the option to send emails later, and now that functionality is being extended to the iPhone in Messages. Now, I was a little bit confused as to how to do this when I first tried, since it's not exactly intuitive the way that it is with Mail. But to walk you through it, just tap on the plus icon on the left, inside of Messages. That's going to open up all of your iMessage apps. Then just scroll down to more options, and it should be pretty close to the top near the App Store, and you'll just tap on Send Later. Now, if you tap on that, it's going to make your message bubble dotted, and it's going to bring up a little date wheel for you to select the date and time for the message to be sent. So you don't have to think about sending that message at a particular time. You can just schedule it and let the iPhone do all of that work for you. Another thing that is also really nice is, say that you accidentally scheduled it for the wrong time after you hit send, you can actually always go back and change the time as long as the message hasn't sent. So that's really good. Also, if something happens later and you realize that you don't actually want the message to be sent, as long as the message hasn't been sent, you can also delete it right there and it'll never be sent, so the other person will never receive it. So that's actually something that could be really, really useful for a lot of situations, and I think you'll really love that. And inside of Messages, let's say that I'm sending messages to somebody in Russian and they don't speak Russian. Well, now when they receive the message, all they have to do is just tap on it and they can translate it instantly inside of Messages without having to copy and paste, go into another application, know the language that it comes from to translate it. It'll just do it all automatically on device, which is really great. Now, the last couple of features are pretty small in my opinion. So inside of Maps, we have topographic maps for those of you guys who like hiking. So if that's relevant for you, now you have that option. That's pretty cool. We also get new game mode, which is going to be basically a way to minimize performance automatically, going to background tasks and put all of that towards your gaming so that we maintain high refresh rates and frame rates. And also it has some features in it to reduce input lag from controllers and output lag to AirPods and other things like that. So overall, that might be a nice feature if you are a hardcore phone gamer. I don't really know how many people are out there who really are super into phone gaming, but if you're one of them, I'm sure you're going to love this feature. There's also other features like web page summarization for Safari, automatic mail grouping, and other things like that, which are coming later. But again, I don't think all of us are going to be able to benefit from these features since they seem pretty heavily driven by Apple Intelligence. And that's only going to be available on the iPhone 15 Pro and Pro Max. at least for iPhones. So all in all, I think that the new features are cool, but a little bit underwhelming in many ways, and a little bit unfortunate as well, because as I've been saying pretty much this whole video, and since Apple's keynote, it's a little bit frustrating that they've been implementing these ML engines in their phones for years at this point, and they've said that they're so capable of, compute power and tasks like artificial intelligence and other things like that, but for some reason, only the newest of the new A series chips can actually take advantage of these features when they're released. Fortunately, though, for the iPad and Mac side of things, as long as you're on a device that has at least an M1 chip in it, you're going to be able to take advantage of all the AI stuff when it actually does release. And speaking of the iPad, everything new with the iPhone is also new for the iPad. There's really nothing standout for the iPad this year that differentiates it from the iPhone. So that's why I haven't really mentioned the iPad this entire time. But with that being said, I thank you guys so much for sticking around with me through this whole feature overview video, and hopefully you learned something new about the features of iOS 18 and iPadOS 18 that you didn't know before, and if there are any features that I missed that you really particularly thought were interesting, please feel free to drop them down in the comment section below. And while you're down there, definitely make sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel for more content, and share this video with your friends. I'd really appreciate it. And with that being said, I will see you guys in the next video. Later.